Today on the Bass Channel, I am extremely excited and proud to present to you the Bass Channel signature Thunderhorse IV from McGrath Guitars. So let's just start at the beginning. This project started off as a wacky one-off idea to showcase McGrath's custom order capabilities, but since then has taken on an entirely different life. We were introduced to McGrath guitars a couple months back, and we made a video showing one of their stock P-Bass models. But in that video, Chuck said,
You tell them the color you want, the electronics you want. The point is you get to pick everything.
Which got my brain firing into trying to come up with something not only totally different, but as realistically versatile as possible. Don't get me wrong, the stock P-Bass model that we looked at from McGrath was great. I particularly liked the flatter 12-inch radius and some other construction appointments, but at the end of the day, and I mean no disrespect here, it was a P-Bass. And doing this now for 9 years, I've seen P-Basses, I've seen jazz basses, and there's really not much you can do at this point to those models that's going to impress me that much. So in dreaming up this custom one-off idea that I thought it was going to be at the time, I looked back to this wall for inspiration. Obviously all of these basses are totally different. They serve their own specific purpose, but of the 27 that are back here, there's a couple that are really standout. First and foremost would be this one. Now, I know I just kind of shit on P-Basses a minute ago, but this is a particularly great feeling and great sounding precision bass. Back in 2017, June 3rd, 2017 to be specific, I made a video installing these EMG Geezer PJ pickups, and I was so blown away by the tone that they're never leaving this bass. So this was kind of the cornerstone of the Thunderhorse. I love passive EMGs, and I definitely wanted that to be included in this project. Next up is this bass. This is a 2015 Gibson SG bass. I've had this for a few years, and I'll be honest, it took me a couple years to really figure out where its strengths lie and how to use it. But once I did, this thing was definitely eye-opening, and it was an epiphany for me on what it can do. Now, This specific one right here is currently fretless. Just ignore that for the moment, and instead let's focus right here. This is Gibson's modern take on what has now become known as the Mudbucker, the Sidewinder, or more simply the EB pickup. Now, this modern version has little to nothing in common with the original Mudbucker EB pickup, outside of the cover, the aesthetic, and the placement, which we learned previously has a tremendous impact on the overall tone. A couple years ago, I actually brought 8 or 9 basses to one of Chuck's rehearsals. It was for some video project that never really panned out, but one of them was this SG bass before it had a fuzz circuit installed and tape wounds on it. It was just completely stock, out of the box, and we learned that night that this pickup in this placement has the ability to fill a mix and fill a room, unlike the rest of the Warwicks and LTDs and Jacksons that we played that night. This one definitely stood out. So I mentioned earlier that this is not an original traditional Mudbucker EB pickup. This is actually a Thunderbird pickup. It's just made to fit under this cover to kind of fit that old school aesthetic. Which leads me to these two basses. This is a short scale Thunderbird and a non-reverse Thunderbird, both of which have the TBHZ, which is a passive EMG Thunderbird pickup. Now, I'm fully aware that at this point EMG has become kind of a meme around here, and even Dave wants me to do a whole video talking about my affinity for EMG and all of that sort of stuff. It's not important for this video, it's a story for another day, but what I will tell you for now is that everybody likes what they like. You have your favorite thing, I have my favorite thing, that's all good. EMG pickups, particularly in their passive kind of PJ and even in the case of these Thunderbird pickups, it's just what my ear gravitates towards. It's what I personally think an electric bass should sound like in their own respective styles. And the reason that they're in every single one of these basses back here is that it just makes my job easier having to dial in a plethora of different tones across a wide array of different pieces of musical gear, amps, pedals, etc. But again, that's another story for another day. What's important right now is this TBHZ. So now that all of that prelude is out of the way, here it is, the Thunderhorse. Let's check it out. Starting with the pickups, up at the neck position is a passive EMG Thunderbird pickup, the TBHZ. This pickup has a DC resistance of 8 kiloohms, a resonant frequency of 2.85 kilohertz, and uses a ceramic and steel magnet.
The introduction of iron inside of the coil increases that inductance. Ceramic has much lower iron content. It doesn't shave off as much of the highs because it doesn't have quite as much inductance. However, if you have a ceramic magnet and you put the steel pole pieces, then you're going to reintroduce that iron. You're going to have a warmer sound anyway. So like a pickup that's made with ceramic magnets but steel bars or steel pole pieces, the presence of the steel will warm up the sound. It will kind of taper off some of those highs in a way similar to what's happening with the Alnico.
The PJ pickups are the passive EMG PJHZ set and feature Alnico 5 magnets. The P pickup has a DC resistance of 11.35 kiloohms and a resonant frequency of 2.47 kilohertz. The J pickup has a DC resistance of 7.7 kiloohms and a resonant frequency of 2.4 kilohertz. Comparing the PJHZ set to the Geezer set, the PJHZ set is just a little bit hotter and a little bit brighter. They also don't have exposed pole pieces, which fit the aesthetic better. The controls are simple: 3 volumes, 1 for each pickup, and a master tone. Again, this bass is completely passive. obviously, I'm not the first person to put some sort of humbucker in the neck position of a P-bass, but as far as I can tell, those are all just independent mods. I'm not familiar with anybody doing it at a kind of production level. But if the comment section is good for anything, it's proving me wrong, so let me know down below. And of course, some of us are going to be reminded of Billy Sheehan with his Mudbucker and P-bass combo, but this is different than that in a couple of ways, but the most important one is that all three of these pickups are fed through a single output. Which leads me to my final bass example from the wall behind me, the Gibson G3. Now, this bass is another example of kind of that perfect tone, quote unquote. These three pickups together produce a sound that is unlike most other instruments, and it's something that traditional P basses and jazz basses and PJs are just incapable of. And the thing that kind of turned into a happy accident is that the Thunderhorse completely evokes a lot of the hallmarks that this bass has, which is solid and consistent low end, like a glassy top end that doesn't get too piercing or shrill or harsh, and kind of that jazz bass thing where the phase cancellation scoops out some of those perfect mid frequencies that just makes this thing sound incredible in just about every mix. And that's kind of what's happening here. Now, of course, the pickups are different. They're in kind of different spots. You do get a little more versatility in choosing the pickups, but when all three of these are on, again, it's not 100% identical, but the things that fans of the G3 like me and Chuck, love about that bass, you definitely find here, again, with just like a slightly different kind of seasoning sprinkled on it. But again, a lot of those hallmarks of the G3 are definitely present in this bass. Just like the pickups, the construction is also a blend of Gibson and Fender. First, we've got basically a P-bass-ish body in a 34-inch scale, 4 inline tuners, and a hipshot kick-ass bridge. We enter Gibson territory with a 12-inch radius on an ebony fretboard. It's also got a 1.5-inch nut width, which you'll find on either a jazz bass or a traditional Gibson Thunderbird. Quarter sawn rock maple neck, 2 dragon plate carbon fiber reinforcement rods with a 2-way spoke truss rod, inadvertently throwing in some StingRay influence there. The metal parts are all hipshot. I mentioned the kick-ass bridge, but there's also a hipshot 3-string retainer and hipshot tuning machines. Oh, and I almost forgot, the strap pins are Dunlop strap locks. The colorway is quite obviously inspired by the Les Paul Custom. Black finish, gold hardware, and an ebony fretboard. But instead of a mahogany body, which would have also been interesting, this bass features a 2-piece ash body. This bass came shipped with Labella RX nickel strings, but because I absolutely destroy uncoated strings in under an hour, this video actually features 3 different sets of strings. The RX nickels, Elixir stainless steel, and Labella stainless flat wounds. So to summarize the variety of tones that you can get with the Thunderhorse, first and most familiar is a ever so slightly hotter than normal P bass, covering anything you'd use a P bass for. Of course, you can do PJ for all your PJ and kind of pseudo jazz bass scoopy type of tones. A Thunderbird pickup butted up against the fretboard for kind of vintage EB tones or even some dub stuff. One of my favorite combinations, which is the Thunderbird and the P together, which is going to be similar to just the Thunderbird. It's a little bit more even in its response, a little bit more rounded off, and it's great for, again, you can still do dub stuff with it, but it's really good for pop and country things. The dark horse kind of combination of the Thunderbird and the Jazz, I've heard some people say that it's StingRay-ish. I don't know if I hear that, but it's got a very interesting and distinct kind of mid-bark to it. Lastly but not leastly is all 3 on wide open, which, I mean, I'd be surprised if there's a genre that this can't do. Everything that we've played with that, just everything at 10 all the way up all the time, it sounds good for pretty much everything. So now that I've pat myself on the back for this design and concept, the real credit goes to Cormac McGrath of McGrath Guitars for putting it together, making it a reality, and making it extremely comfortable to play. My favorite couple things, like I mentioned, I love the flatter 12-inch radius. That's kind of a Gibson standard. That's what they do across pretty much all models. Compared to Fender's 9.5 or their vintage 7, I like the flatter feel on the fingerboard. Also with this neck, this kind of unfinished maple feel, pretty sure it's a D profile. Super comfortable in the hand, feels really good. And again, like I mentioned before, the thinner 1.5-inch nut width that you find on jazz basses or the original, not original, but the standard Thunderbird. Super comfortable, just love it. It's really easy to kind of do anything you want to do up there. And finally, 6-bolt neck joint is also really nice. So again, this thing, it's obviously, as you heard, it sounds really good. The thing that you can't quite test for yourself because you're not in the room is you can't feel it, but it feels really comfortable. The mat on this, you can really feel, there we go, there's a better shot of it. You can really feel the wood grain, which is something that I'm kind of a sucker for. Like, you get so used to the hard polyester plastic finishes that it's kind of nice to just feel like real wood. Don't turn that into anything embarrassing. So, like I said at the top, this was originally supposed to be just a silly, wacky, one-off idea to show McGrath's capabilities in their custom shop. Kind of a, if you can dream it, they can build it cliche thing. But as it turns out, this is actually going to enter their standard lineup. There's probably a better way to say that, but point being is you can go in and buy this base model, BASE model. You can customize the color. I think you can customize the pickups, although I'd highly recommend sticking with these because they sound great, but I do know that there is at least one, I think it's red, that's got the Geezer pickups with this Thunderbird. And you know that that's going to sound great, but you can't beat the, at least for me, you can't beat the hidden pole piece. It just looks so good. So if this is something that interests you and that you want, you don't have to go with the LP custom vibe, even though I obviously endorse it. And if you want to go Seymour Duncan or Aguilar, you can do that too. But again, I would, like I said, highly recommend these because these sound awesome. Go to McGrath's website, check it out. You can put TPJ in your custom order form and you can get it in green or blue, or I think he's making one in white, which is gonna look awesome. I might have to get a second one. And we may have a 5-string design coming real soon. We'll see how that goes. Let's just get through NAMM first. But until then, I think I've said all there is to say about the Thunderhorse from McGrath and the bass channel. So thank you very much for watching. You can help us win the YouTube game by hitting like and subscribing and leaving a comment and all that stuff. But anyway, here's Wonderwall.